The morning sun burned through a thin veil of mist as Elijah Cole rode into Independence, Missouri. The town stirred awake beneath a sky the color of tarnished silver. Wagons creaked. A blacksmith's hammer rang out in the distance. It was the sound of another day in the borderland between civilization and the unknown. Elijah dismounted outside Judge Whitmore's mansion and studied the house that gleamed like a white jewel in the dust. Tall columns, polished brass railings, roses climbing the front gate. It looked like it belonged in Boston, not the rough edge of Missouri. He adjusted his hat, brushed trail dust from his coat, and took the folded letter from his pocket. The handwriting was sharp and controlled. Need experienced guide. Escort duty to Colorado Territory. Generous compensation. After 3 months of drifting from one odd job to another, the promise of real money had caught his attention. So had the sender's name, Judge Ezra Whitmore. The man was famous for power, money, and a reputation as cold as steel. A servant opened the door before Elijah could knock. "Judge Whitmore is expecting you," he said, his tone polite but his eyes unimpressed at the sight of Elijah's weathered hat and dusty boots. Inside, the air smelled of polish and wealth. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, mirrors gleamed, and the rugs were so thick Elijah's spurs made no sound on them. He followed the servant to a study filled with books, maps, and the scent of pipe tobacco. Behind the desk sat the judge himself, tall, silver-haired, and sharp-eyed as a hawk. "Mr. Cole," Whitmore said, not rising, "your reputation precedes you. Decorated cavalry officer, expert tracker, a man who knows how to survive when others don't." "That was a long time ago, Judge," Elijah replied. "These days I'm just looking for honest work." The judge gave a thin smile. "Then we'll suit each other. My daughter is to be escorted to Denver City. She's marrying a man of importance, Harrison Blackwood, of the Colorado Mining Corporation. The journey will take 6 weeks if the weather is kind. Your job is to see her safely there." Elijah nodded. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow at dawn. You'll be paid $200 upon arrival, half now, half when she's delivered." The judge opened a drawer and slid a heavy pouch across the desk. Coins clinked inside. Elijah picked it up, weighing the promise of comfort against the unease in his gut. "Seems generous for an escort job," he said. The judge's eyes cooled. "Nothing about my daughter is simple, Mr. Cole. She's spirited, raised with Eastern ideas that don't belong in frontier country. You'll need patience. I've dealt with worse. One more thing," the judge added, his tone turning hard. "This marriage is vital to my family's future. Failure is not an option." The warning was plain. Elijah tipped his hat and left without another word. At the livery, the familiar smell of hay and leather settled his nerves. His Mustang, Scout, whinnied softly at his approach. Elijah rubbed the horse's neck. "Looks like we've got another job, boy. Colorado this time." Old Murphy, the stable master, appeared from a stall, wiping his hands. "Rough country that way," he said. "You ain't riding alone?" "Got a passenger." Quote, Murphy raised an eyebrow. "Hope she's got grit. Last month a man came through asking for a guide west. Big scar on his neck, mean eyes. Said he was heading for Colorado, too. Turned him away. Didn't like his look." Elijah's gut tightened. "He say his name?" "Nope. Just said he had unfinished business out that way." That night, Elijah took a room at McBride's boarding house. He spent hours cleaning his revolver and rifle, checking the blades on his knives, and laying out supplies. He'd done dozens of escort jobs, but something about this one felt off. The judge's fear, the overpayment, the warning about his daughter. It all stank of secrets. Dawn broke cold and gray. Elijah saddled Scout and rode to the mansion. A covered wagon waited in the drive, loaded with trunks too fine for the trail. A woman's angry voice cut through the morning stillness. "I won't travel with some hired gun, Father. It's humiliating." Elijah rounded the wagon and stopped short. The woman was young, early 20s, with auburn hair caught in an elaborate twist and eyes the color of green glass. Her blue traveling dress was spotless, her chin tilted high in defiance. "Josephine," the judge said through clenched teeth, You are not traveling alone. The territory is dangerous. Mr. Cole comes highly recommended. I don't care if he's recommended by the president himself, she snapped, turning on Elijah with a look that could have frozen a rattlesnake. I don't need protection. Elijah's tone stayed calm. Then I guess my job's done. I'll return your father's gold and find other work. That startled her. You'd walk away from that kind of money? Quote, Ma'am, I have no interest in dragging an unwilling passenger 800 miles through hostile country. Her father's expression darkened. Josephine, this isn't a debate. Let her decide, Elijah interrupted. She's the one making the trip. For a long moment, Josephine studied him. Her anger cooled, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. Then she sighed. Fine. If I must endure this absurd arrangement, let's get it over with. But understand, Mr. Cole, I am not some backwoods trailhand to be ordered around. You will address me properly and keep your distance. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Miss Whitmore. Elijah tipped his hat. Now, if you're finished scolding me, we've got daylight wasting. He helped her up into the wagon. She avoided his hand as if it burned. Her maid, a nervous girl named Mary, huddled among the trunks. The mules strained as the wagon lurched forward. Elijah rode alongside, the rhythmic creak of wheels mixing with the crunch of hooves on dirt. Independence faded behind them, swallowed by the wide Missouri plains. The morning sun climbed higher, casting gold across endless fields of grass. For hours, Josephine sat straight-backed and silent. Finally, she asked, How long have you done this work? Since the war. Before that, cavalry scout. 3rd Colorado Regiment. My father said you were decorated. Elijah's mouth twitched. Medals don't mean much out here. The prairie doesn't care what you've done, only if you can stay alive. She gave a tight smile. Comforting philosophy, Mr. Cole. He glanced at her. Just honest. Quote, By noon, her hairstyle had come undone in the wind. Dust streaked her fine dress. Her corset dug cruelly into her ribs. When they stopped for coffee, she tried not to show discomfort, but Elijah noticed. Not used to travel like this, are you? He asked. Does it show? He handed her a tin cup, little. She took a sip and nearly gagged. This tastes like dirt. He grinned. That's because it is. Welcome to the frontier. For the first time, she laughed, a quick, surprised sound that made him look up. As the day stretched on, silence settled between them, easier this time. The wind whispered through the tall grass. A hawk circled high overhead. When they made camp near a creek that evening, Elijah worked methodically, tending the animals, starting a fire, setting up the women's tent. Josephine watched him, her expression unreadable. This land, she said quietly, it feels so big, like it could swallow you whole. Elijah poked the fire, sending sparks upward. It can, but if you respect it, it'll carry you where you need to go. She met his gaze across the flames. And where do you need to go, Mr. Cole? He looked into the dark horizon, then back at her. Still figuring that out, ma'am. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and Elijah felt the faint, familiar prickling at the back of his neck, the kind that warned him when danger was near. Tomorrow, he thought, the real journey would begin. The storm came out of nowhere. One moment the sky above the Kansas plains was clear. The next it boiled dark with rolling clouds that blotted out the sun. Elijah had seen storms like this before, the kind that could strip flesh from bone if you were caught in the open. Get in the back with Mary, he shouted over the rising wind. Cover yourselves with blankets. Josephine hesitated, her hair whipping loose in the gale. What about you? I'll handle the team. Go! The wagon lurched as the mules panicked. Ears flat, eyes wide, dust howled through the canyon like a living thing, turning daylight into twilight. Elijah's bandana barely kept the grit from his mouth as he fought the rains. The wheels bounced and rattled over rocks, the air thick with flying sand. Through the roar, another sound cut in, hooves fast and heavy, closing from behind. Elijah's gut went cold. Stay down, he yelled. "We've got company!" Out of the swirling dust rode 3 men, faces masked with bandanas, rifles slung low. They fanned out in a half-circle, their silhouettes ghostly through the storm. "That's far enough," Elijah barked, his rifle leveled. The lead rider, tall and thin with cold gray eyes above his scarf, raised a gloved hand. "Easy there, friend. We're all just trying to wait out the storm." "Then find another canyon," Elijah said. The man chuckled. "Ain't much shelter out here. What you hauling that's worth guarding so tight?" His gaze drifted toward the wagon. "None of your concern," Elijah said, voice steady. "Turn around." The gray-eyed man tilted his head. "You talk like a soldier. Been one, haven't you? Those habits die hard." Elijah's finger brushed the trigger. So do men who test them. The silence between them stretched tight as wire. Then the bandit laughed again. "All right, soldier, we'll be seeing you. Long way to Denver. Plenty of road left to cross." They vanished into the dust as quickly as they'd appeared. When the storm finally passed, Elijah's shoulders ached from gripping the reins. He guided the wagon into a sheltered hollow, coughing up grit. Josephine and Mary crawled out from the back, pale and trembling. "Are they gone?" she asked. "For now," Elijah said, scanning the ridges, "but we'll see them again." "How can you be sure?" Quote. "Because I've been them," he said quietly. "Once you set your sights on something valuable, you don't quit easy." They made camp beneath a stand of wind-twisted cottonwoods. The air was still thick with dust, coating everything in a fine brown powder. Elijah checked the mules while Josephine and Mary tried to clean themselves up. When he returned, Josephine was sitting by the fire, arms wrapped around her knees. "They'll come back, won't they?" she asked. "Maybe. Depends what they think you're worth." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "My father thinks I'm worth a mining contract." Elijah poured coffee into her cup. "He thinks he's protecting you in his own way. He's protecting his investments." She stared into the flames. "Do you have family, Mr. Cole?" "Had," he said. "A brother once. Died in the war. Parents before that. Just me now." "I'm sorry," she said softly. He shrugged. "War takes what it wants." After a moment, she said, "Teach me." He looked up. "Teach you what?" "To shoot." He blinked. "You're serious?" "If those men come back, I won't just sit and scream. You said the frontier doesn't care about the past, only if you survive the present. So teach me to survive." Elijah studied her face, the determination, the stubborn lift of her chin. She wasn't joking. "All right," he said finally. "But you follow instructions. You treat the weapon with respect. One mistake and someone dies." "I understand." He handed her his spare revolver, checking that it was unloaded first. "Hold it like this, firm but not stiff. You control the gun. It doesn't control you." Quote. She mimicked his grip. The revolver looked heavy in her gloved hands. "It's heavier than I expected," she admitted. "Everything's heavier out here," he said. "Consequences especially." He showed her how to aim, how to sight along the barrel. She listened carefully, jaw set in concentration. When she fired for the first time, the sound cracked across the prairie, startling the mules and making her jump. The bullet kicked up dust yards away. "Warn me next time," she gasped. "Nobody warns you in real life," he said. "Try again." By the 5th shot, she was steadying her aim. By the 10th, she hit a tin can he'd set up on a log. Josephine lowered the gun, hands trembling slightly. "It's awful." "Necessary," he replied. She nodded slowly. "Then I'll learn." Later, as the fire burned low, she sat beside him, the revolver resting across her knees. "Who was she?" she asked suddenly. "Who?" "The woman you keep thinking about when you stare at the fire." Elijah hesitated. The past pressed at him like an old wound. "Her name was Sarah," he said at last. "She was a preacher's daughter from Kansas City. Thought I was some kind of hero. We were supposed to marry after the war. What happened? The war didn't end for me when the fighting stopped. I couldn't go back to that life, so I left her." He stared into the flames. She followed anyway, joined a wagon train west. The Cheyenne raided them. I wasn't there. Josephine's voice was barely a whisper. You blame yourself. I was supposed to protect her. I failed. You couldn't have known. He gave a short, humorless laugh. That's what I tell myself at night. Doesn't help. She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "Then don't fail this time." He looked at her, the proud, stubborn judge's daughter, who had insisted she didn't need anyone. Her green eyes met his without fear. "I don't plan to," he said. The next morning, they broke camp early. The land was changing. Flatter, emptier, the sky vast and pitiless. For the first time, Josephine didn't complain about the dust or the rough roads. She even helped hitch the mules without being asked. By midday, they came across an overturned wagon by the side of the trail. Splintered wood, scattered belongings, and blood dried dark on the seat. "Stay here," Elijah said, drawing his rifle, but Josephine was already climbing down. Someone might be alive. He cursed under his breath and followed. They found a man crawling through the grass, an arrow lodged in his shoulder. "Please," the man gasped. "My wife, my daughter, they took them." Elijah knelt beside him. "Who?" "White men, dressed like Indians, rode off north." Josephine's face went pale. "We have to help. We don't know how many there are." "I don't care," she said fiercely. "That could be us tomorrow." Elijah stared at her. Against his better judgment, he nodded. "Mary," he called, "tend his wound. Josephine, get the medical kit. I'll find their trail." It didn't take long. 6 riders, moving fast. No attempt to hide their tracks. He returned to the wagon. "I can catch them," he said, "but I'll have to go alone." Josephine squared her shoulders. "Then I'm coming." "Absolutely not." Quote, "That could be my sister out there," she said. "You said the land doesn't lie. Then let it see what I'm made of." Elijah met her gaze and saw the same fire that had carried men through battlefields. "Fine," he said, "but you follow orders. No heroics." She nodded once. Agreed. They rode hard, following the tracks through broken country. Near dusk, they found the raiders, camp in a dry wash, 6 men around a fire. 2 captives tied to a wagon wheel. A woman and a girl. Elijah checked his rifle. "When I start shooting, you cut them loose." Josephine swallowed hard. "What if?" "No what ifs. Just do it." He moved like a shadow, years of soldier's instinct returning. The first shot dropped the guard by the fire. The second sent chaos through the camp. Josephine darted forward, sawing at the ropes with his knife. A raider turned his gun toward her. Elijah's shot took him in the shoulder. Another charged from behind, only for Josephine to whirl and fire the revolver. The shot went wide, but close enough to send him diving for cover. Moments later, it was over. Smoke and silence. 6 men dead or dying. Josephine stood trembling, the revolver still raised. "I almost shot a man," she whispered. "You did good," Elijah said gently, taking the gun from her. "You saved them." Her eyes shone with shock and something else, understanding. "I'll never forget their faces." "Don't," he said. "Remembering keeps you human." They escorted the rescued family back to safety. That night, as the stars spread bright across the black prairie sky, Josephine sat beside him by the fire. "I'm not who I was," she said quietly. "The trail changes you." Elijah nodded. "It changes everyone." She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw in her eyes something he hadn't seen in years. Trust. And maybe, if he was honest with himself, something more. The trail to Colorado grew steeper with every mile. The air thinned, sharper, colder, and the silence of the mountains pressed close. They had crossed into outlaw country now, a place where no law reached, where men vanished without leaving even dust behind. Josephine had changed. Her dresses were torn, her gloves long gone, her face browned by sun and wind. But her spirit had hardened like iron. She rode beside Elijah now, not behind him. She carried her revolver properly holstered, and she spoke less, but when she did, her words carried weight. They stopped one evening by a frozen creek at the base of the Rockies. The peaks towered above them, white and eternal, catching the last fire of sunset. Elijah unpacked supplies, quiet as always, while Josephine gathered wood. For a while, the only sound was the whisper of the creek beneath its crust of ice. When the fire finally burned bright, Josephine sat across from him, her hands open toward the warmth. "You never told me why you took this job," she said softly. Elijah looked into the flames. "A man's got to eat." "That's not an answer." He hesitated, then sighed. "Truth is, I didn't care where the road led. I just needed it to keep moving. Some men drink to forget. I ride." Her gaze didn't waver. "And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I'm not so sure I want the road to end." Quote. The confession hung in the cold air between them. For the first time, Josephine didn't look away. "You don't have to keep running, Elijah," she said. "You've already outrun your ghosts." Before he could answer, the crack of a rifle shattered the quiet. Elijah dove for cover, dragging Josephine down with him. The fire burst into sparks as another shot rang out, splintering the wagon wheel. "They found us," he muttered. "Who?" "The men from the canyon. I told you we'd see them again." He peered through the darkness. 3 shapes moved along the ridge, the same gray-eyed leader among them. They had waited for their chance, following all the way from the plains. Elijah loaded his rifle fast. "Stay low when I say, get to the wagon." Josephine's voice was steady. "I'm not leaving you. This ain't up for debate." She grabbed his arm. "You taught me to fight. Let me prove it." He met her eyes, fierce, defiant, and saw she meant every word. "All right," he said, "but do exactly as I tell you." The outlaws opened fire, bullets whining through the cold air. Elijah fired back, aiming low, keeping them pinned, while Josephine crawled to the wagon. She found the spare rifle and took position behind a rock. Her hands shook, but she breathed steady, just like he'd taught her. When one of the gunmen tried circling closer, she fired. The shot echoed, and the man dropped, rolling down the slope. Elijah looked over in surprise, then grinned. "Good shot!" For nearly an hour they traded bullets under a moonless sky, then silence. Elijah crept forward, gun raised, scanning the ridge. No movement, no sound. He turned back toward the camp. Just as the gray-eyed man stepped out from the shadows behind him, revolver aimed square at Elijah's chest. "Told you we'd meet again," the outlaw said. "You made me ride 200 miles for what's mine." Elijah froze. "What's yours?" The man sneered. "Judge Whitmore's gold. Thought you'd hide his precious daughter behind a hired gun. You should have stayed out of it." He cocked the hammer. "Don't," a voice said behind him. Josephine stood 10 paces away, rifle leveled, eyes blazing in the firelight. "Drop it." The outlaw laughed. "You think you'll shoot me, little lady?" She fired. The bullet struck his shoulder, spinning him sideways. Elijah lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. The 2 men crashed into the dirt, struggling, fists slamming, boots kicking. The outlaw grabbed Elijah's knife and drove it downward. But Elijah caught his wrist and forced it away, then struck once, hard. The man went limp. When it was over, Elijah pushed himself up, breathing hard. Josephine stood there, rifle trembling in her hands. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, her voice shaking. "You're bleeding." "Just a scratch." But her eyes filled with tears. Tears not of fear, but release. She dropped the rifle and threw her arms around him, clinging like she'd finally stopped running too. For a long time, neither spoke. The mountains stood silent witness. When morning came, the world was washed in gold. They buried the bodies and hitched the mules again. The snow-capped peaks ahead gleamed brighter than before, like a promise waiting to be kept. By the 4th day, Denver came into view, a city rising from the dust, half wilderness, half dream. Josephine stared at it in silence, her expression unreadable. "That's your new home," Elijah said quietly. She didn't answer right away. "Feels strange," she whispered. "I left one cage only to walk into another." He frowned. "You don't have to go through with it, you know. I gave my word. Maybe it's time you gave your heart something instead." She turned to him, eyes shining. "And what about you? What will you do when this is over?" He looked toward the mountains. "Maybe I'll stop running." The streets of Denver buzzed with wagons, horses, and the smell of coal smoke. Judge Whitmore's agents met them at the station, polished, polite men in fine coats. They handed Elijah his pay in a sealed envelope. "You've done well, Mr. Cole," one said. "Miss Whitmore is expected at the Blackwood estate tonight." Elijah tipped his hat, but Josephine didn't move. She looked at the carriage, waiting to take her away, then at him. "Is this goodbye?" she asked. He hesitated. "It's your world, Miss Whitmore. I just walked you to the gate." Her voice cracked. "And if I don't want to walk through?" For a moment, the noise of the street seemed to fade. Elijah took a slow breath. "Then you ride with me. No promises, no destination, just the open trail." She looked at him, really looked, and smiled. "You know what my father would do?" "Yeah," Elijah said. "That's what makes it worth it." She took his hand. "Then I guess I'm choosing the trail." They rode out at sunset, side by side, leaving the city's smoke behind. The road stretched west, endless and wild. Elijah glanced at her. "You sure about this?" Quote. Josephine smiled, the wind pulling her hair loose like the first day they met. "I'm sure of one thing," she said. "You were hired to lead me west, but somewhere along the way, I think I started following you." Elijah grinned. "Guess we're both lost then." And together, they disappeared into the burning horizon. Two souls who had finally stopped running, finding freedom not at the end of the trail but in each other.